We have a quorum. We have all the members here except for Amanda Gates-Lamoth is on Zoom, as well as Greg Benoit. Other than that, we're all here. So we'll call the meeting to order. And I'd like everyone to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. As far as visitors, we have our staff here this evening. Thank them for being here. With regard to public comment, we had some submitted, but as noted in the board agenda, while the Board of Education resumed in-person Board of Education meetings, given public health conditions, the board is continuing to maintain acceptance of public comment only through written format. All public comment can be submitted in writing by email to Caroline Whitaker, and you can find her email address online. That's Mr. Giard's Executive Secretary. And the comments received prior to noon on the meeting date will be sent to board members and posted on board docs online. To review the board's agenda and comments submitted in advance of this meeting, members of the public can access the board website under the Board of Education section, Agendas and Minutes, the subsection, and click on the board docs icon. The board will be using this publication protocol in lieu of having individuals speak at the board meeting and or having the statements of members of the community submitting public comment read aloud. And with that, members did receive some public comment today. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do you have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
Just had one comment on the food service financial report.
Sure.
What's happening with that?
So, sorry. The modified accrual accounting, same scenario I gave last year. The June numbers don't reflect the $80,000 that's coming down from the state. They were favorable last year.
Okay.
Having said that, the Waterford Board of Education General Fund did absorb about, I forget what the number was, I think 65,000. But no, they were favorable last year.
So are we going to get that reimbursement again?
We received it in July, so yes.
Okay.
I'm going to just really ask people to speak real loud. I'm getting word that the board members on Zoom cannot hear us, so I'm going to really ask people to like borderline shout.
Where's the mic?
On top of them.
Oh, for George?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
for Greg
here's
back here.
the YouTube feed, right?
Yeah, Greg's here, and this is the YouTube feed.
So our mics are right there? Yeah.
No, you're loud and clear for YouTube.
Okay. We may have lost Greg, but okay.
Can I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's all right.
This laptop is not doing one key that I need to get into my document. It's frozen. Sorry.
Try hitting, have you hit the refresh button?
Yep.
Are you trying to get into board docs?
Yes.
Okay, you can just borrow mine.
Thank you. And I'll show you if you want to play with it.
Oh, the shift.
Sometimes you have to actually remove this and then reset it.
I know, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
So motion on the floor for consent.
Okay. Were there any other comments on the consent agenda at all? Okay. We'll take it to a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries. What do we have next here? Correspondence. We do have a couple of letters that were sent to us. The board is and a card, so it was very nice, and thank you for that.
Some information, was the Chloe Wilson report, was that part of correspondence?
That's part of public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, part of public comment, okay.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any way to get contact information for that person?
It was.
Administration has been in contact with her.
Oh, okay.
What are we talking about?
The public comment we received today?
Yeah, but it was signed by multiple people, right?
No, there was a report also from Chloe Wilson.
The church one?
Nope. It was a document.
Curriculum.
Oh, okay, yes, all right, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, next will be the superintendent's report.
Sure, I'm just going to let board members back into the Zoom room.
Okay.
I think Mr. Benoit and Ms. Lamont are back in. Superintendent's report, I'm going to try to speak as loud as I possibly can. Obviously, first and foremost on our minds is the opening of school. We are on track for a Monday, August 31st opening with students. Staff return to work this week with new teacher orientation on Monday, and all staff in the district returning to work on Tuesday. In a few moments, I'm going to ask Mr. Powers to go over what the 4 days of training this week has entailed, with our fourth and final day being tomorrow. But before that, I just wanted to run through the various aspects of our reopening. Our facilities are in good shape. Cleaning products are in place. Rooms have been decluttered to maximize distancing for students. Designated teacher areas in classrooms have been taped off. And as you saw when you walked into Waterford High this evening, things such as hallways and stairwells are marked for traffic, and CDC signage is hung through the building. On the supply side, a fair amount, or a very good amount, of our PPE is in, certainly enough to get school going. Plexiglass continues to come in. It's certainly, again, the entire country chasing the same inventory, but we are in good shape on the supply side. Staffing, overall in good shape. We do still have a few long-term certified sub positions that we're working on. With that said, we do have people in place for next week. For any parents or community members listening, we are in need of paraprofessionals and recess and lunch monitors. Those are positions we're still looking to fill. We've acquired several building subs in our building to lock in our subs, as all districts are essentially competing for the same pool of people. On the financial side, we received word this week that Waterford will receive coronavirus relief funds. The estimated allocation for Waterford is about $375,000 to address non-personnel costs related to reopening of schools. From a student and family perspective, cohorts have been assigned as we enter a hybrid approach as a phase into full learning. Distance learning students have been assigned to classes. We are working our very best right now on a device deployment front. We signed out 650 devices last spring, which for the most part still remain in student hands. That leaves us about 25 Chromebooks throughout the district amongst the 5 schools on hand. We do have several hundred on order now, and we'll talk more under new business on the purchase of additional Chromebooks and iPads to facilitate our learning plan this year.
Hello?
Yep, we hear you, Mr. Benoit. At this point, I do want to circle back to the professional development offerings and training offerings this week, and have Mr. Powers walk you through the grid in front of you.
Thank you. So, as you know, you've increased the pre-service days from 2 to 4 this year, and they were needed. So, in front of you is the grid, and in our Friday note, you'll get a Google Doc attachment, which will actually have each day broken out with all the talking points that the principals have been doing. Really, the goal was to have a deep, thorough understanding of the reopening plan for all the staff. And in addition, or components of that would be today's learning was on what does the first unit of instruction look like. In front of you, you'll see 2 of the cameras. Each of those camera tripod setups were part of the CARES Act funds that we purchased, one for each classroom, so that those cameras would be plugged into the back of the interactive whiteboards, so children can zoom in, see the whiteboard as a screen share, and hear the audio from the cameras, and then turn on the video as necessary if they need to demonstrate something for the kids outside the schoolhouse. The design of Waterford's reopening plan is to have your one set of children, and whether they're in person in the schoolhouse or virtual, not in the schoolhouse, that will be teaching them. So in-service today was on how to use that camera setup, as well as how to utilize the Class Link program that we talked about earlier, which is a one screen sign-on for all of the district apps to make it easier for children in the schoolhouse and outside the schoolhouse to kind of access those as needed. We'll be talking about how do we assess, because that was a challenge for us this spring. We're going to be really striving to educate our faculty and have our faculty use much more formative assessment or performance assessment rather than a standardized end-of-unit test, which has security issues when you're in multiple locations. And throughout the day, the days where there was extra time in the morning or afternoon, principals were very aware that the staff needed to be in the classroom more to really refine their plans. So while we did dedicate some time for that, principals also made extra time to ensure that they're ready for school, as Tom said, on Monday.
Quick question, do we have the internet capabilities? I don't know the exact term, I'm not technologically
Bandwidth.
Bandwidth.
Yeah.
Do we have the bandwidth to accommodate everybody at once?
Yeah, great question, Marcia. So, my initial thought would be get the cameras and we'd be live in 240 locations within Waterford, and we don't have the bandwidth for that. But if we can take kind of units, so video takes about 10 units of bandwidth, we'll just say metaphorically, and audio takes like 1 unit, Zoom takes like 1 unit, screen sharing takes like 1 unit. So we have enough bandwidth to do Zoom, screen sharing, audio with everyone, 7 hours a day, no problem, and video for some of the staff. Is it a quarter or a third? Depending on the length, that's fine. More than that, you'll get some freezing issues because of the bandwidth, which is why we're continuing to use Google Classroom and Seesaw as the learning management platforms so that the content is on there. The teachers will be using the audio for the initiation of the lesson, the mini lesson itself, and the guided practice. They may be then toggling off the audio part to do the independent practice and see how the children inside the schoolhouse are doing, and then see how the children outside the schoolhouse are doing using the raise your hand feature in Zoom.
Hello, is anyone there?
Yep, we're here, Greg.
We can hear you.
We can hear you fine, Greg, thank you.
I don't think he can hear us.
So that's what
Hey, it's Amanda. I'm here, but I don't hear anyone at all.
I don't hear anyone either, Amanda,
I emailed and I sent a message saying I cannot hear one word, if the meeting started or not. I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea either,
So I feel really useless right now.
Could they possibly?
Well,
I'm not able to get there this evening.
You and I apparently are public too.
I guess we'll just have our own meeting then, Craig. if I said I can't come in this evening, I just had a lot of things going on this evening, and I was happy to do the Zoom, but I've already sent a couple messages telling Tom that I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I told Tom, and Tom told me he could hear me, and just called back.
All right, oh, they hear us. Okay, guys, hi, I guess they all hear us, so I guess we'll just,
Yes, we
too
can,
bad we
I
can't
can
hear
hear-
them. We can't participate.
we can hear you
I
fine.
don't know.
Can you hear me?
I
Amanda.
can't hear the meeting, so I don't know.
Amanda, can you hear me?
So,
Tom?
I'm not sure if that answered your question fully.
Would you click where it says
It
mute?
did,
on the
but
drum?
I have
Oh,
another question then, a follow-up question. Are
The
we
carrot next to it.
looking to increase our bandwidth even further?
Yeah, so we looked at that, but,
Cost prohibitive?
our
Go
school
up to.
district, as well as every other
The
public
microphone.
school district, goes through the CEN, the Connecticut Education Network.
Uh-huh.
And the Connecticut Education Network does not have the bandwidth statewide to allow,
I hear Craig now. Amanda, do you hear Craig?
all the video that was going to go on, so
Hello? Hello?
we
Yes,
are
we can hear you
limited
fine.
to
You can hear us now,
the
right?
bandwidth of the CEN.
I can hear Craig talking.
Right, he's talking. Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg.
I have no idea where Mr. Powers is on the meeting now.
We're on
Yeah,
your
what time?
superintendent's
We're in
report.
superintendent's report, and I'm giving a pre-service professional learning overview, Mr. Benoit.
What happened with public comment?
We accepted it. So going back to the bandwidth, Craig, could we go back to the?
Yeah.
Boy, I
So-
can't hear that at all. Somebody's talking.
Craig, you need to either get off or get on, but you're interrupting the meeting. So, as I was saying.
Yeah, so we looked at it, and the CEN just won't allow us to really go beyond that. Now, could we upgrade our system? Yes, but it would be in the multiple six figures to really get us up to the bandwidth we need to, so.
Multiple six figures, huh?
Yes, and that's what Ed said. So I think what we have now is a workable plan. Is it ideal? I don't think you can say anything in 2020 has been ideal.
Right.
So this will be yet another one. Joy?
So along those lines, I see there are IT people scheduled for 3 days.
Yeah,
Is
so
there any way to get them for a longer period of time?
certainly.
The reason I'm asking is I've been contacted by a handful of teachers, and their anxiety level is extremely high. And we're struggling here with people that are familiar with equipment, and
So-
they feel they're gonna panic, and they just got their training this week. So I really think we need people in the buildings more than 3 days.
Can
So-
we have one
so,
IT person in
I-
every building?
Yeah, so I agree with that, Joy. So again, like any good plan, we then monitor and adjust. So I basically had said to the IT department, we need people at the PD, at each school, because we only have 2 tech coaches for 5 schools, and this is going on simultaneously. So they pre-recorded some stuff. We had an IT person in each building. I then said the first 3 days, just being an educator, like, we're gonna need someone on site. If we get to day 3 and we're gonna need it longer, then we will tell the IT people we need them there longer. It was my best guess, a few weeks ago when crafting this plan, that we would at least need them the first several days of learning. But with that being said, Joy, like any good educator, we'll monitor and adjust and extend their need as needed.
And does the faculty understand that, or do they think they're getting it for 3 days? Because honestly, they are very,
Well, all I can.
there's a lot of anxiety about
Yeah,
this.
so all I can say is that each principal has been delivering their plans to their faculty. Each principal heard your question today, and I'm rest assured that each principal will be making that clarifying statement tomorrow with their faculty.
Additionally, Craig and I have been in the schools each of the days this week with staff, and we're hearing those needs as well. And
Okay.
one of the things that we've noticed is the anxiety level has come down as the week has gone on, as those unknowns decrease. But certainly, we don't want technology to get in the way of teaching and learning. Chris?
I just want to make sure I understand. These cameras that are here, they're the same cameras in the classroom.
Yes.
So I have another question. So for every classroom, there are 2 cameras?
No,
No.
one camera.
One camera.
One tripod. The reason there's 2 today, apparently, is so that John can,
I don't care why there's 2 today.
okay, done.
So my next question. The one camera that's in the classroom, is that camera on the board, or the camera is for them to see?
Yeah, so the purpose of the camera is twofold. One is to capture the audio, and you can see with the robust mic system that from anywhere in the classroom, the audio can be picked up really well. So,
Well, I might not agree with that, but I'll go on.
These cameras aren't talking to the board members. That's a
yeah,
difference.
this is what's being broadcast through YouTube. There's a different one on the Promethean board that's an older one, but okay.
No, but the camera, you're saying the camera that's here, there's 2. So
Yes.
one of these 2 is in the classroom, correct?
Correct.
And that camera, the students can hear.
Yes.
And now that it's on this tripod that I understand, the tripod, the teacher can go, oh, go to the board, 2 + 2, oh, they're in the room, they can spin it around. Is that right?
Sort of. So let me kind of clarify that a little bit for you, Chris. The camera will be plugged in the back of this Promethean board. There's actually a desktop computer. Will be plugged into the desktop computer. That desktop computer will be running Zoom, and the kids will see what's on the Promethean board. So as the teacher's writing, to use your analogy, 2 + 2 on the Promethean board, the kids will see that in a screen share. So whatever is going on the Promethean board, the kids will see on their screen. The students will hear what's going on in the classroom, and if a teacher has something, let's just go classic, a science demonstration, that you can't put on the computer, that's right in person, then they'll turn on the video portion to show the kids outside the schoolhouse that those physical things that they need to show that aren't on the Promethean board.
So if these are the cameras, and they're the same thing, why today, if we're all quiet, can Greg not hear?
Because they're not, these cameras are feeding YouTube, not the Zoom link that they're on.
All right, so I guess what I'm getting to is, have you demoed this thing to see and put 15 teachers or 12 teachers, whatever the number is, in a room to see if it works?
So we have modeled this out with the IT department, we've modeled it out with remote learning. Over the summer, we've tested it out, and all of the tests have come back that this is working.
Okay. So what's going on here
It's
is
a little different
Okay,
than in the classroom, respectfully.
okay, thank you.
We're actually using this camera system to tape the PD for staff who were, for substitute teachers, say, to view this week's training. So we're actually using this system to record our sessions this week.
I was just under the impression that what's going on now is the same thing, and what's
No.
going on now is the same thing.
I could appreciate the sense of frustration then, that we would be setting our faculty up, that.
And then I hear what Joy is saying, so then it made me go, well, if it's not working here, how's it gonna work for them? But if what you're telling us is it's different, then so be it. Because if it doesn't work, we'll know next month, because they'll be complaining that the system doesn't
We'll
work.
know next week.
We'll know when this is.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do know
We'll
what
know
you're
So
saying.
letters will come in going, the process is not working. But if you say it's working, we take you at your word. Thank you. Sorry.
And you're going to hear a little bit in just a moment from Mr. McCrano how it worked over the summer, because we ran Summer Academy this summer virtually using a similar setup. And that's a good segue into that. Thank you, Mr. Powers. So this summer, we did run Summer Academy. I know school opens in one day, but we always like to provide a recap of Summer Academy for the board. And as I said, it's really allowed us to test and refine our model as we pursue a more synchronous model this fall. So Mr. Macrino is here to give a short overview of how Summer Academy went.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Gerard. Hi, everybody. I have good news. We experimented this summer, and Waterford's, I'll come over here so I back. It works. It works. We had 10 to 12 classrooms over the summer. That was full synchronous learning, broadcasting live from the classroom into the homes of 80 students, both in Summer Academy and extended school year. Summer Academy, remember, is our regular education, and some IEP students in extended school year is our students who have extended school year in their IEP. So we had 80 students, so we were able to broadcast into 80 homes. Most of the time it was live, and the only technological issue we had was on, I believe, Zoom side when it crashed one day, not because of Waterford, just because of everything. So on a small scale, we got it to work. The great thing about Summer Academy is that we had the time to experiment. The experiment was successful, and we collected responses from all the teachers that participated in this. What would you have done different? What did you wish you knew? What did you wish you knew before you started, and what do you want your colleagues to know? I collected all those responses. We sent that out to staff, so they even have a better idea of what pitfalls to avoid. So, long story short, we are able to provide a very robust, focused curriculum, patching those holes that the kids may have missed, and to get them ready for next year. I really want to thank the staff, both the teachers and the paraprofessionals, who really stepped up to the plate and explored a whole new world. The feedback from parents was exceptional, and the paras did a really great job teaching live as well. So they would be part of the main lesson, and then they would break off almost for office hours where small groups of kids could come to them for one-on-one support. And we hope to continue that model starting Monday. And I'd like to thank Mrs. Malone and Mr. Sachs for their help this summer as well, getting through that. That ran from July 6th to August 11th. Engagement was very high. These are families that signed up. They wanted their child to be part of this, and very high attendance and engagement within that attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macrino. Any questions for Mr. Macrino on Summer Academy? How many students involved?
We had, I would say, 80 students throughout the whole program. 50% of that, I would say, is a fair estimate for those that were extended school year, who also participated in the Summer Academy lessons.
Thank you so much for your hard work, you and the rest of the team. GPA research and process update. You'll recall last winter, the board asked administration to examine our GPA system, specifically the calculations we use to compute our GPA. Really asking us to examine, is the system we're currently using best practice, consistent with our current practice in other high schools around the region, state, and nation. We certainly want to give our students the best opportunity at success in high school and beyond. So one of the benefits of last spring is it did allow staff to do a comprehensive data gathering of most high schools' GPA systems in the state of Connecticut. That research does continue. I just wanted to provide the board with a brief timeline of what to expect on this particular project. In November, the high school administration and Craig will present findings to the board. So what did that data gathering of the various high schools throughout Connecticut say? By January, if that data indicated changes or tweaks needed to be made, we'd be prepared in January with what those changes would be. And then by spring, March, April, somewhere in that time frame, we would lay out and communicate those possible changes to students and families. And that's the type of thing that's typically phased in with underclassmen. So by the November board meeting, we'll be prepared with a full presentation on GPA. It's been probably about a decade, I think, since the district really looked at this, so it is certainly timely. I wanted to provide the board with an equity update. Obviously, the issues around equity remain at the forefront of all of our minds. It remains a vital component of where we're heading as a district. as these tragic events of social injustice continue to happen. And while our district's education and programming contain many elements of social justice, examining bias and racism and other conversations around respect, diversity, and race, we're striving for a comprehensive, cohesive, and coherent approach. As I wrote to staff and parents last spring, and I quote, "None of us should shy away from discussing these topics as preparing our students, to quote our mission statement, to be a responsible citizen prepared to contribute and succeed in an ever-changing world is core to our mission. It requires us as educators to not only talk about these topics with our students, but perhaps more importantly, listen. I ask all of you to reflect. Are we doing all we can? What else can we be doing to achieve our mission of preparing our students? And what do we already have in place that we can leverage to a greater degree? Our collective future depends on it." So late spring, early summer, we developed an initial equity action plan, which I sent to you in a board memo. And we began that implementation of that plan this summer. Recognizing that our leadership team and our staff have varying readiness levels to lead and execute this work, leadership team and staff training will be vital up front if we're going to have productive, intelligent, and informed conversations with our students and one another. And I want to highlight some of the elements of that initial action plan for the 2021 school year. So embedded in our district reopening plan, under the SEL section, there is language that dialogue between and among students and staff will certainly start this year, or really continue this year. This has been and will remain a consistent topic of discussion and action within our administrative team structure. Administration at central office in all 5 schools earlier this summer registered for a year-long professional development course with the following comment, and I'm not going to quote all of it because you have that, but training on implicit bias, things such as microaggressions, privilege. How do we intervene as professionals? What does a cultural, competent curriculum look like? What are those elements of inclusive language? The team will be reading books such as White Fragility, How to Be Anti-Racist, Between the World and Me, Just Mercy, and the Racial Healing Handbook, as well as the new Jim Crow. Tier 2 training, which is the next evolution of this year-long training for the administrative team, are topics around discussing race, the power of words, the multi-generational workplace, and LGBTQ issues as well. Probably most importantly, the result of this work will result in a firm and comprehensive district equity action plan. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Other action steps that were either in process or were complete is a curriculum audit, which I spoke about last spring. Examining our curriculum around those issues of equity, implicit bias, cultural responsiveness, and other lenses around equity. Personally, I'll be part of a regional superintendent's professional learning community that will meet throughout the year to discuss leading a district through discussions on race, racism, and equity. And there's a description of that in the memo I sent you. That will really allow us to look at the remaining PD days in November and March and begin to plan staff professional learning as this district equity plan begins to take form. A district equity team will be formed and school equity teams will be formed. Informally, 2 out of our 5 schools already have some semblance of a team up and running, with one of the schools even conducting some work this summer. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Just a quick question, Tom. I don't see anything on here about unconscious bias. Did I miss it, or is it not going to be addressed, or?
So terms such as unconscious bias and implicit bias are used interchangeably. So
Okay.
Implicit bias will absolutely be a part of our training and district work.
Thank
Quick question, could you make these books available to us as board members?
Absolutely.
And if we're interested in becoming part of the team, would that be allowed?
As we develop a district equity plan and form a district equity team or committee, whatever you want to call it, absolutely. I think board member, whether there's a subcommittee structure at the board level in addition, or on the district equity team, certainly I think the 9 elected officials that are ultimately responsible for the district is an important piece of this.
Thank you.
What's the short term in terms of equity that when we start school, that students, if they have an issue, that they can communicate what their issue or concern or bias is? What are you doing to say, in 2 weeks, if there's an issue based on all that's happened, what we're discussing, how does the child communicate their issue and how are we communicating that issue to them? And I'll give you an example. The tennis courts. The lights stay on at the tennis courts all night. The basketball courts, the lights don't stay on. Prior to Corona, that is the case. So when one talks about equity and a kid says, I can play tennis at 9:30 at night, but I can't play basketball at 9:30 at night, how does a child communicate that?
I think first and foremost, they need to go to a trusted adult in their school building. That's a great example. That one's a little complex because it crosses multiple entities, not a singular entity. So,
But for a child,
they don't know that.
They don't know that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that one of the advantages of starting in a hybrid as we phase into full in person is with the smaller class sizes. I think the relationship building between the teacher and the students is, my personal theory is that it will be accelerated. Even though they're only going to see them 2 days a week, I think those relationship buildings, we're front-loading a lot of SEL work. As Mr. Powers mentioned, today was really around what does that first unit, first week, that sort of thing look like. We're really front-loading and heavy emphasis on SEL. The state has given districts the latitude to really focus on SEL within teacher goals this year, which will be important. So, Mr. Jones, I really think it comes down to that relationship building between teachers and students, and knowing who those trust. One of the things we worked on is really making sure kids have a trusted adult in the building. That doesn't always mean a teacher. Happy to let anybody else from the team chime in, but I think that relationship building up front is really important.
Yeah, I think the SEL trust is there, on your particular example, to get adult resolution of that is, as Tom said, is like one is a town entity, one is a board entity. Not even sure the board entity should be on all night, to tell you the truth. But as an example, we the principals talked today about the first unit should be highly engaging to students. We want to make sure they're connected, and we're really going to be folding in purposefully a lot of SEL lessons over the course of the year. When Tom mentioned that the state's allowing us to modify our teacher evaluation plan, that went through a PLEC committee recommendation, and so we would be basically almost looking at the district adopt an SEL goal, and a goal has to have 2 indicators, 2 measures of success. So one is really, what are we doing for deliberate, social emotional learning and rapport, and then probably another indicator would be one on student engagement when we're talking about kids in multiple locations and how they stay engaged. But with that, I would also welcome any other thoughts so that we could add that into our own thought process and communicate out an effective plan. I'm a firm believer that together we can solve problems that individually we can't.
I don't know that I have a solution. I don't know that I have an answer to your question. What I do know, as everyone knows, there's a lot going on in the country, and there's a lot going on in society. And we're starting back to school in a week. And I think it's going to come around in some way, shape, or form. So I would think we need to get ahead of it and say, like, as an example, after 9/11, they said, see it, hear it, report it. We need to do something to get ahead and say, if you feel like you have an issue based on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, here's who you have to go to. The Title IX person, the assistant principal, the dean, any adult. Go to the website and go to some anonymous reporting. We have to do something fast to say, here's what we're doing in our town to address these things. If there's an issue, do A, or you can do B, or you can do C, because a lot's going on, a real lot. And I think no one wants to talk about it, but we have to talk about it and acknowledge it. So I would implore you, we need to get something out fast to address if kids are feeling uncomfortable about things. Because there's a divide, and we shouldn't have a divide. We should all be in it together. And kids need to know, here's what you can do. That's my thought.
Totally agree, and point well taken. I think one of the important things, and our team is here tonight, is really what are those existing structures we already have? So what does morning meeting at the elementary look like related to these issues? At the middle school, what does the wingman program look like? And at the high school, certainly advisory. So we do have some existing structures that I think we can infuse and squarely address head-on what you're talking about. We are rolling out an anonymous reporting system this year that's electronic. Not only can you text or call it, but at the 6 through 12 level, where students have email addresses, if you type one letter, that reporting system auto-populates and they can access it right away. So letting students know how to report those issues, Mr. Jones, is very important.
Well, I'd love to hear at our next meeting where we're at and what we've done and what we've communicated to them, or whatever you're communicating to them. I'm not saying that you haven't, that you let the board know so you can see. So if it comes to us and our constituents are going, hey, what's happening? Nothing's happening. We can go, they're doing something. They've done A, B, C, so people know. That's my thought. But thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the initial challenges of diving into robust work on equity with a real focus and a cohesion is our staff have very varying levels of readiness to engage in conversations with our students about this. Some be like, I don't want to say it'd be like teaching physics for some, but there's varying levels of readiness around this. Some people are certainly, we all bring our own experiences and biases to the table. So investing in staff training up front so we can do this right is going to be really important because we want it to be meaningful.
I think, if I may, the only thing that I would say is that, to make a plan that we think is going to work, many times we're so excited and we get to the end and it didn't, the results are not what we found. We spent so much time making the plan. There are little steps, and I would say most of the youth that I work with, many of them just want to be able to talk about whatever is bothering them, again, whether it's related to, diversity or racism or COVID, or they just want that. That's what they say to me so many times is they just want the opportunity to speak and talk. And I think that if we're in the middle of this shift in education, I know we have to keep some standards, but if we're in the middle of this shift in education, it's a prime opportunity to maybe start having those conversations. My son and 5 other boys this summer took a course with Kevin Booker, which many of you are familiar with, and it was a 4-week session on equality, and I never heard anything my son said, or I didn't hear anything the other boys said, and I called Kevin after, if you know Kevin, and I said, did they speak? And he said, yes, they spoke, and they had so much to say. So, and they shared things, and they shared experiences. And even up to the high school youth, they just want a chance to talk about what's going on in the world and what's going on around them. And if we can, as much, again, I understand that sometimes teachers don't know what to say, but if we can at least get them to the point where they can listen and provide some sort of feedback, it doesn't always have to be the right answer necessarily. That would be very good, especially in this time of change right now. There's so much.
Absolutely. And just one note on Kevin, he's fantastic. He's worked with our middle school
Yeah.
for several years. He's wonderful.
So 6 middle school boys took a course this summer, so they're raring to go.
That's great. We will certainly keep the board updated on our efforts around equity for sure. On the other category, you might have recalled originally scheduled for this December was our 10-year NEASC visit. We just got word earlier today that will be rescheduled to this spring, sometime in the March-May window. At least right now, that's the plan. We'll certainly keep you posted on that. On the SEL training front, you might have seen in the press that free to all Connecticut staff, not just teachers, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, in collaboration with the state and other entities, is offering a 10-hour online course to teachers and other educational staff on social and emotional learning in times of uncertainty and stress, research-based strategies. If any staff, again, can sign up for that, and they'll earn a certificate from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And if you saw some of the TV and press coverage, our own Jason Adler, high school school counselor, was part of the statewide launch of this initiative. So it was nice to be represented by Mr. Adler in that endeavor. The last item under Superintendent's report is just, oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Would we be able to track how many teachers took that?
I don't know, we don't get confirmation of that, but we can certainly do an internal survey and find out how many staff are taking
Do you
advantage of
collect
that.
certifications?
Our initial thought would be that we'd be encouraging teachers to do that during some of their PLC time.
That's what I.
So, we're not setting necessarily a deadline for that because, well, we know like time is precious in what's new learning and everything else. But yes, we do want to really encourage all of our faculty and staff to go through that as time allows.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing a percentage of
Sure.
teachers or staff that take that.
And then the last thing under other is just a few comments on high school sports, that if you've been following this closely, there continues to be a back and forth between the CIAC and Department of Public Health here in Connecticut, and I'll spare you the long version. The short version is that specific to 2 sports, particularly 11-on-11 full contact football and indoor girls volleyball, there remains different thinking between the CIAC and Department of Public Health on those 2 sports in particular that are classified as moderate to high risk. And it is DPH's position that those sports should not be played at this time without modifications, such as 7-on-7 minimal contact or no contact football, or playing girls volleyball outside. Again, I'm giving you a very abbreviated version. CIAC's plan for all fall sports, including football and girls volleyball, is to engage in competition on October 1st, but reevaluating it around the 18th of September. I can tell you that I'll certainly be re-engaging the board on this topic if the CIAC forges ahead with 11-on-11 contact football and indoor girls volleyball, and DPH does not change their position, that those shouldn't be played as is. Up to this point, whether it's CSDE, DPH, whatever, our reopening plan has been based on the guidance of state and the federal health experts. So if there remains a disconnect between what CIAC wants to do with football and girls volleyball and what DPH says, I'm certainly going to be re-engaging the board in that dialogue to figure out what we want to do as a district. So I will keep you posted on that as we approach mid to late September. Conditioning and skill development for all fall sports in cohorts of 10 kids can resume on August 29th, which is Saturday, and that will continue until September 20th, where you can ramp up to more traditional practicing. So.
And to clarify, that is just high school, no middle school?
This fall, consistent with pretty much everybody in the area, we will not be having middle school sports between us and other towns. Our hope is maybe sometime in October to launch intramurals, maybe from a cohort perspective, but we will not see middle school sports between towns here in Waterford this fall. So I will keep you posted on high school sports as that transpires. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Next is item number 5, the committee and other reports. I think the only committee we had that met was the policy committee. Did you want to?
Basically, we just went through the COVID changes to policies, the temporary policy changes, and brought them forth.
I don't know that anyone have any other meetings they went to outside as liaisons to any other?
Retirement commission's coming up.
Okay. Yeah, and I have a link broadband as well coming up. We have no other liaisons here representing any other town committees, so that'll bring us to new business. This is a review, talk about reviewing possible action of the graduation requirements for 2020-21 school year. And this is 2 motions on this one as far as removing the LTS requirement for seniors and then crediting the other classes with 20 hours
So
for
moved.
LTS. Okay, well, we have 2 motions here.
Oh.
The first one is for the removal of the graduation requirement for the current graduating class of seniors. So we'll need a motion for
So
that.
do you want me to read motion 1?
Please. Is
Okay.
it Thomas Ray?
No, this is really consistent with last spring and the action the board
Right.
took. Exactly. We really don't want kids necessarily forcing kids out there. If they choose to do that, that's their business.
Right, okay.
I move that the Waterford Board of Education, given the extraordinary public health conditions, approves the revision of graduation requirements, hereby waiving the completion of LTS hours for the Waterford High School graduating class of 2021 only. By virtue of this motion, all seniors will be deemed to have successfully met the LTS requirements for graduation.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay. So we'll take that to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. And then the second half of this is to address the remaining students in our freshmen, sophomore, and juniors to be credited with 20 hours of LTS time.
I move that the Waterford Board of Education, given the extraordinary public health conditions, approves the Waterford High School graduating class of 2022, 2023, and 2024 be given the equivalent credit of 20 LTS hours in the 2020-2021 school year as it relates to the LTS requirements deemed necessary for successful graduation.
Thank you.
I'll second again.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. We'll take that to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Item B is the discussion of possible action, approval of non-lapsing account expenditures.
Sure, a little background, and then I'll hand it off to Mr. Mancini. You recall that the Board of Ed and Board of Finance earlier this month approved the formation of a non-lapsing account for the 2020-2021 school year, allocating 50% of the FY20 money returned to the town for specified future costs. As we shared at the August 5th special meeting, we are facing significant COVID-related unbudgeted costs. It has changed slightly since the board packet went out due to the recent notification we received about the coronavirus relief funds of about $370,000 that I mentioned earlier in the meeting. So Joe's going to walk you through some of those costs and basically the kind of the health and safety stuff we're going to ask you to hold off on, but go ahead, Joe.
Correct. So, as Tom mentioned, the rollover account was approved by the Board of Finance. This allows us to spend roughly $330,000 this year. So, one of the things that the Board of Finance has asked us for is pre-approval for any expenditures that that come out of this fund. So last week we drafted some of our short-term PPE needs and some of our IT needs. Now the PPE needs, I'm not going to ask you guys to approve tonight, but it's difficult to articulate the sheer volume of gloves and masks that we're buying. We've already ordered about 60,000 masks, and those are in stock. Those should last us anywhere from 10 to 15 weeks. So we were going to ask for another 65,000, which will now push to a grant. Looking at our Chromebooks that are out in the district, we felt it was a prudent time to purchase roughly 850. Now, the dollar amount that we're asking for is actually more important because, unfortunately, there's been a rush on Chromebooks. So the amount might be 800, might be 900, but I'm asking for authorization to bring to the Board of Finance a request for $212,500 worth of Chromebooks. These are, it's impressive. I mean, there's an absolute rush on these. I would expect these to actually come in probably January to February. If we get them earlier, that would be great. iPads, we're looking for an additional 150 for roughly 44,000. Those we will be able to get in relatively quickly.
And those are really used at the pre-K2 level where a Chromebook doesn't make a whole lot of sense sometimes for a 3 or 4-year-old. I'm sure Pat can appreciate that with their grandkids.
So the thought here is, at the beginning of last year, we had over 100 iPads in the school to be used at the primary level and 650 Chromebooks in school to be used for instruction grades 3 through 12. We don't have that inventory now because it's out in the public for people who need a device. Our stock is about 40 iPads and 25 Chromebooks district-wide, internal. We know we have new students who have registered. A subset of those new students are going to need access to a device to get access to the online distance learning. We also know that last spring, in an asynchronous model, many families we only issued one device to, but there might have been multiple children in the family. And while not perfect, in an asynchronous world, you could kind of do your work and then another kid could go on and do their work and so on and so forth. In a synchronous model, that doesn't work. So we know we're going to have to issue out more devices to families in the community to allow for equity of education outside the schoolhouse. And in addition, we also need devices in the schoolhouse for teachers to use with kids, because especially in the younger grades, we're not expecting them to bring in their backpack on the bus, off the bus, bouncing around the hallways to the classroom, devices back and forth. For the older kids, we would expect that, but just developmentally, we want to have devices in the classroom that we can use for instruction with teachers. And so that's why we're asking for this request today, so that we can really have equity inside and outside the schoolhouse in this hybrid. And for some, distance learning might be a full year endeavor.
Clark Lane Middle School, the high school, how many students total? Rough number.
So about 600 and about 840. So what's that math there, Chris?
1440.
Okay, thank you.
How many devices total right now in the district? Rough number. iPad, Chromebook.
In the district, about under 50 iPads throughout 5 buildings and 25 Chromebooks throughout 5 buildings. That's it.
In reserve or total?
Total, because we had to loan out. We use
Anything
it.
beyond that
So-
is currently loaned out. So
Right, but with what's loaned out, total.
Oh, I'm
650
sorry.
650 more Chromebooks. So a total of 675 Chromebooks.
So
Thereabouts.
700, you have half of what you need,
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you gonna do till February, till January, till they come from China?
Yeah. So, you know, ideally, if we had the devices, and I know I will get to your question, Chris, like, teachers could do the planning on Seesaw and Google Classroom, and kids could be accessing that. If they had devices in the school and out of school, obviously then it minimizes paper passing. That's not a reality. So teachers are going to have to plan on these learning management systems, and they're going to have to probably pass out papers to kids from those plans into, well, when they're in class, and do things a little more conventionally. It's going to cause for a little more planning time for teachers, a little more preparation time for teachers than what we want, because we know that teachers are having to stretch their planning and preparation time doing this digital hybrid format. So we really do need these devices to, where we can, minimize that extra work for teachers, but with the reality that, yeah, we're not going to have them for Monday. So we principals are, that was what today's PD was on. How are we planning the first unit, and how are we going to be able to work through these uncomfortable...
Let me ask you another question.
Can I just add to what he said? We do have 575 Chromebooks on order right now. We expect those in, they're supposed to be in already, but we do expect those in within the next month. So we do have a standing order of about 575.
Which will,
Plus the 500 that are coming any day.
yeah.
No,
No.
you're double counting.
What?
So you're double counting. So that by the end of September, there'll be 600 in. There's supposed to be 200 in tomorrow, and then 400 over the next month. Then we're asking for this additional order out of the rollover account. So Chris, simple math: 2,100 kids in the district for that are
That
of
need a
Chromebook
Chromebook.
age,
Yep.
and there's 332 that are of iPad age. So I mean,
Sure.
there's a very large void.
So let me ask you a question. All of these devices, how many kids have signed up and said, I'm not coming to school, I'm staying home, distant learning? How many?
About 394.
So you have enough. Are you taking from the kids that are coming to school to give to the 400?
So all of our children will be distance learning 3 days a week while we're in hybrid.
Right.
So we can't necessarily take, because for 3 days a week they need still. Did we take from last year's seniors back? Yes.
200.
Well, or the
Right.
Delta who needed it.
Right.
So of the 200, there's a subset who needed it. But then we have new kids coming in, pre-K through 12, new to Waterford. A subset of that might need it. And then we have new pre-K kids who will need it. So, you know, in a perfect world, you know, as we said earlier, we would have more bandwidth, and in a perfect world, we'd be at a more one-to-one level with technology. And what we're trying to do is see what do we absolutely need today, and moving forward, because the future's unknown, these devices will be utilized. So this isn't just a COVID thing, then this will be kind of how, you know.
So the town has never been set up for the middle school or the high school to have one-to-one devices. You just haven't done it.
No.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So ultimately, what we're asking them to do is to kind of pass along a recommendation for us to give to the Board of Finance. And at the next Board of Finance meeting, I would be looking for them to approve me to spend $256,600.
It makes sense, it's pretty simple. How are they gonna say no? You know what I mean? You don't have one-to-one. If you knew back then what you knew now, they need a computer. It's very simple.
Will this get us close to one-to-one?
It will. It will.
Yeah, it will. Between patching together end of fiscal year money last year, where we, you know, part of the 600, some board operating funds this year. So we have these 600 on order, we have 650 out there and another 850. And then potentially, it's a governor's initiative, Everybody Learns initiative, get some more Chromebooks through that. This is gonna get us there by minimally year's end. Hopefully sooner, but definitely by year's end.
And that'll cover any, like, breakage or things like that, too.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the motion from the board, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is we'd be looking for the board to authorize $256,600
Well, I think,
out of the non-lapsing account.
it's recommended is just, yeah, I mean, yeah, as presented.
You can do it as presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Take it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next up is item C, which is the second reading of the policies we saw last time. Is there-
Right, so this was the only one that wasn't necessarily COVID related. So this was the federal funds of purchasing. This was, as you recall, a recommendation to actually codify our practice, which has been our practice, in a policy format from our auditor. So if there's any questions, myself or Joe will be happy to entertain them.
This is simply a check in the box. This is saying to be compliant on the federal regulations, we need to have certain language incorporated into our policy. Rather than rewrite our existing policy, which is actually more stringent than the federal guidelines, we just adopted this federal one that was written up by Shipman and Goodwin. And you're one of about 170 towns in the state that's doing this in this next 6 months.
Okay, entertain a motion on that? Good.
Let's see. I move that we approve policy 3270A as presented.
Second. Joy with the second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.